You're listening to the British Baseball Podcast. My guest today has the record for the most European Championship appearances as a player in 7, and currently is the MLB hitting consultant, and is creatively working with 65 MLG draft picks, with 3 of those going in the first round. He coaches the powerhouse that is University of San Diego, and in 2016, he was introduced into the Great Britain Hall of Fame. Baseball family, I am happy to be alongside Coach Bradley Marcelino. Brad, how are we doing?
Matt, you're the man. I'm doing great. Everything is good. Appreciate
Excellent.
you having me on, man.
No, thanks for coming on. I know you're a very busy man. Anyone that's followed your Instagram or seen you online will know how busy you are, so I'm really appreciative of the time that you've given us. So without further delay, do you want to tell us a bit about your family background in baseball? I know that you left Britain when you were 11 years old. So, do you want to tell us a bit about your family history with the sport in the UK?
Yeah, definitely. I left when I was 11. I grew up born in Essex, grew up in Enfield, went to St. George's Primary School. I remember walking out of the school when I was 11, saying bye to all my friends. Literally, there's a long kind of driveway. And I remember walking down that driveway thinking, man, this is kind of crazy to be able to just leave. But we were heading to California, have a history with Team GB through my dad played for Great Britain in the 80s. In London, really only the place that was doing stuff then was ASL, the American School of London. So my dad coached there. We played in Regent's Park, did all that stuff. The Enfield Spartans, powerhouse back then with some legendary players that will probably listen to this. So I learned so much from those guys, the Lenarios and Rob Nelson, who came out from the U.S., Mr. Godfather, Big League Chew, just a bunch of really good dudes that you learn so much from. And a lot of the stuff that, you learn just because in the UK, the game continues to grow, but you're obviously very grateful for anything, right? Just because of the resources. So I've taken that a long way, just being grateful for what you have and understanding the game. So basically that was kind of the history of the program. I started my first European Championship was in '99 in Parma, Italy, where we'll be going, not Parma specifically, but we'll be going back to Italy in September with the senior national team, which hasn't been in Italy since '99, which is kind of insane. So since '99 all the way to my last time as a player in 2012 in the WBC. And then coached with Coach Liam Carroll. So after that, and now with Coach Drew Spencer. So that's kind of the story.
That's pretty cool. And what are your memories like about watching your dad play in the UK?
I remember a lot from how those trips. One specific memory was at the Oval when you probably heard of that, Matt, when all the MLB alums came and the Bonds and the Stargirls and all those guys. And I remember Doug DeCinces, one specific cool memory was he kept telling my dad to back up. My dad played third base. He kept telling him to back up, and he was basically playing left field as a third baseman. And it was because Willie Stargell was up with a black Easton, or actually the old school green Easton. And if you know Willie Stargell, he's a very, very giant human being who hits the ball really hard. So he got some good advice. But great memories, just all those guys on the team and them allowing me to be the bat boy and kind of just annoy them for a little bit was always a joy to have. I always knew that was going to be part of my life moving forward.
That's pretty cool, because I was just going to ask, was baseball always something you wanted to get involved in? Was it more like following your dad's footsteps that made you want to pursue baseball as a passion?
Yeah, definitely something where it's not for everyone, because I remember leaving school at St. George's in Enfield, right? Everyone would go kind of to the corner shop or to play. My dad would pick me up and have my baseball uniform and something ready to eat, and then we'd go straight to the field and work. So there's times definitely where as a kid, you have to kind of make a decision on what you want to do with baseball, because you're either going to get on board or you're going to go play with your buddies. So I say it was something that I wanted to do just because I worked so hard at it that I kind of always wanted to. And then eventually it's just been so life-changing, just with everything that's taught. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we mentioned before that you've been part of the GB national team set up since you were 17 years old. Was when you made your debut?
Yeah,
99?
Yeah, 99, yeah, 1999, yep.
So what's some of your favourite memories about the national team?
Well, the ones that I can share publicly
Yes.
are there's some good ones, but definitely kind of being the rookie in '99 in Parma was fun. Josh Chetwin and a lot of other guys on that team that I was the youngster, right? And Vince Garcia was coaching the team, and I got a pinch hit and I did well right away. So then I kind of stuck in the lineup and I ended up doing pretty well. But the national team, it was always about the guys that are with you. It's always about that. There's definitely great times in Barcelona when we won the silver medal with guys like Mike Nikias and Brant Ust. But every trip is so different, right? Like you have the guys in Germany and the trip in Spain, Czech Republic, Israel. There's so many things that you do it for really the flag, right? You have so much pride in the country and who you're representing. At least that's how, I felt, and that's how kind of we're moving forward is you have to have pride in what you're doing. It's a big deal to play for a national team. So definitely the guys, definitely the relationships, definitely some of the experiences, definitely some of the things that happened, that you can kind of point back to, like, man, you could write a book about this stuff. This thing, you could write a book, but you might want to keep some people nameless in that book because there's some funny stories.
Yeah, I bet that. The thing is with these stories, the clean ones I love hearing on there. But I think if you want to know the really juicy ones, you have to earn that and get in the national team yourself and experience it yourself. Yeah. So I'm not privileged because I'm fat and old and I'll never play for GB. So I'm not worthy of those stories. But we'll
talk about that next time in London over a pint.
Yeah, I'll do that as long as you're buying. You come up to Manchester, it's cheaper.
Absolutely.
I can get about 5 in for the price of 1 London pint. You've got some really interesting things. For those that can't see this on YouTube, just behind Brad is a Great Britain jersey framed and signed.
Yep.
Is that
that's from the WBC?
Yeah.
That's from the WBC. There's the little, I say little, but it means so much to me. The Hall of Fame. And then we got one on this side right there from Manny, and then just a bunch of bats, and the wife is on down there. So there's all kinds of stuff happening back there.
So this room catches fire right now. What's the one thing that you're allowed to leave with?
Wow.
What do you rescue?
Allowed to leave with, or that I'll leave that I want to leave with?
That you'll leave with. That you want to rescue first. No return trips.
Great question. Probably my car keys so I can drive away.
Good answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I got the boys inside and them, but I don't know. Yeah, probably the keys and maybe grab a bat so we can still take BP somewhere.
Yeah. So speaking of bats, what's your favorite? Because a lot of people know you for your hitting adventures. What's your favorite bat to use?
Yeah, so back, when I was doing, I used a company called BWP, who's still kind of around, but yeah, I used the 3330, and then kind of moved over. The Chandler bats came out, and Victor's. There's so many good bat companies out there now, but 3330 was the model I used. Either a 243 with the end loaded, or a 271 that was a little more balanced. This was kind of the go-to.
Cool. Throughout your time as a professional, who are the players that you've learned the most from?
Man, good question. I'd say, I don't know if there's one specific. My dad obviously has been very influential, but one specific player. There's so many little things that you take from each guy. right? There's so many little things that I took from the guys that played in, like Nikias, who played in the big leagues, but also guys that the local guys, like the Ben Gogans and the Nick Carters and the David Donaldsons and those guys. I think that's what's kind of kept me going in this game, is putting value into what people are telling you, but just being really open-minded about it all. You can learn. My dad told me this a long time ago, and I remember this. We were hitting in Enfield, and a guy was walking by, and he started giving me advice, and I kind of, worst way to say it, but just was kind of a dick about it, right? Like, and just didn't really listen to the guy. And I kind of like turned my back on him, and I got in trouble for that. And I'll always remember that lesson where he said, hey, regardless of who's talking to you, whether it's the guy in the corner of the street or the guy that owns the business or whoever it is, there's always something to learn. There's always something to learn. And now it's just about kind of filtering what works for you. So there's definitely big people and teammates in my life that have been influential. But you just pick something up from everyone, Yeah.
That's very cool. So you've been doing the hitting consultancy for the best part of 7 years. How do you stay fresh and on top of your game and keep yourself motivated? What still drives you?
Yeah. So just to clarify that too, I was at the University of San Diego from 2011, 12, and then I resigned there in 2018. So I was the hitting coach and recruiting coordinator there. I left there. Now I've been doing some of the private hitting stuff, and it wasn't necessarily something that I was trying to grow or build. It just I just started hitting with the local guys and the pro guys just because I was more available. I wasn't on the road recruiting and doing the college thing. So yeah, now that's kind of, obviously it's built up to a lot of guys that I work with, to stay kind of on top of it. In college, as a college coach, you wear probably 10 different hats. You do admissions, you do financial aid, you do transcripts, you do recruiting, you do housing. There's so many things that you have to do. And then, by the way, develop players and make sure we score runs and win ball games. Now, just focusing on the hitting stuff, I'm able to kind of just have more time really to dive in and talk to other guys about it, learn from players. I've probably worked with pretty much every organization as far as player-wise. So you get to hear the Rangers hitting philosophy, and you get to hear the Diamondbacks and the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Padres. You get to hear their philosophy from the point of view, from the perspective of the player, which I think is a big deal, because a lot of coaches sometimes it's a one-way street, but sometimes the best way is the timing of your delivery and listening. So I've learned so much just from players that I've worked with, coaches online. There's some really, really good hitting coaches out there that you just reach out to, and you just, try and build a network to continue to learn and grow.
That's really cool. So who's some of the favorite people that you've met during your time as a hitting consultant?
Obviously Manny was great. Continuing to kind of talk with him and listen to him. What a great, a great way to kind of learn more about the game.
How did you meet Manny Ramirez? Sorry, put my teeth back in.
Manny Ramirez, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, all good. So Manny's son played at University of San Francisco, which was also the same conference as the University of San Diego. I didn't know his son then, but it kind of just happened when we were on our way out to New Orleans, my wife and I, and then his wife and his son sent me a message saying, hey, my dad wants to kind of come out, and then kind of took it from there. He called me, and then we kind of went over some stuff and developed a relationship, and then and then continued to kind of work with him and hit and just kind of FaceTime and talk about hitting stuff. So that was it's been good. He's such a good person to obviously talk to, just not necessarily just about hitting, but just everything, just everything in general.
That's pretty cool. So any other favorite people that you've met? We mentioned before you've had 3 first-round picks. You want to brag and show off with some name drops?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when people ask about that. It's like, to be a good coach, you recruit good players, right? You recruit good players, and then you bring them in. You don't screw them up. So a lot of the stuff is guidance. A lot of the stuff is kind of just putting them in the right direction. But obviously, KB Kris Bryant was unbelievable to have a front row seat to him, watching him just hit home run after home run after home run, and type of person, type of character, just the individual he is unreal. Also, Kyle Holder, who just got Rule 5'd by the Phillies. He was a first-round pick with the Yankees. Connor Joe was with the Pirates. A lot of guys that have been really good to work with at USD when I was there, and now moving forward, there's just so many guys that have played in the big leagues or are first-rounders. But it's cool to see, regardless of if they're first rounders. I mean, at this point, there's probably been 12 to 15 first rounders that have come through, but also the guys that are maybe not as high of picks or free agents or didn't get drafted or whatever it is. Sometimes those guys are the ones that are more aware about what they're doing. Just based on whatever it is. It may be talent, it may be location, it may be timing. There's a lot of different factors involved in that. But seeing all those guys work has been pretty cool for my career.
Yeah, I can imagine. So we're working with all these pros and top athletes. What advice can you pass on to the young athletes of today? What can you say they can learn, or what do you think they need to do to promote their own game and to push themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of kids, and this was different when I was in the UK, but I think what's cool is that a lot of your listeners, a lot of them are probably UK based. There's some that aren't UK based, but there's a lot that are. So for me to be able to talk about it from the position of being in their shoes is something that I think is important. But a lot of what happens now, as you know, gets so caught up and wrapped up in social media. And especially now here, there's a lot of kids that say, oh man, that freshman in high school committed, or that eighth grader committed to whatever school, or the sophomore committed to whatever school. I'm better than him. Why? How come no one is offering me a scholarship, or how come no one's offering me a spot? So one piece of advice is put your head down and ignore the noise around you, because no one knows your time in this game. No one knows your clock in this game. No one knows your development in this game. There's people that can say, he's not good enough, or no, I'm not sure if he's going to make it. In the end of the day, if you know it in here, and if you believe that you are good enough and you're going to put your head down and not worry about the noise around you, then you're going to be the kid that kicks the door down and finds a way to make it happen. But I think what happens today is a lot of kids are so worried about the surroundings and how it looks, and instead of kicking the door down, they just kind of want to peek inside first and see what happens instead of just going for it. And that's coming from me, where I had nothing. The resources that I had weren't anything close to kind of what's happening now, because in the UK there's so many guys that have done such a great job. So head down, grind, work hard. And not more than that, just not get so consumed or caught up in what's happening with other kids around you, because no one knows where your development path is. You don't have to be the best player right now at 10, at 11, at 12, at 13, at 15. Just because you're not the best player right now, it doesn't mean you don't have a future in this game. Everyone develops differently. So I'd say that's kind of the biggest piece of advice I would give the kids.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. If it goes back to some more things about the hitting and stuff.
Yeah.
What is the first thing that you look at when you're analysing someone's batting or swing? How do you approach the project that is the player?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So for there's three guys from the Tigers that are flying in next week. Kind of A to Z. Basically, you just kind of have a conversation with them before. And really, it's you look at it as, here's the starting point, and here's the video they sent me, and then you kind of have an idea based on just the video on where I think we need to take it, based on how they move, based on how their swing works, based on how their feet, their lower half, their hands, whatever it is, right? So you kind of look at that, and then you start to dig into what's under the engine, meaning how do they think? what do they, if they're going to explain to you something within the swing, like where does the stretch happen in the body, or where does something happen mechanically in your swing, and you start to talk to them about that, it gives you a really good idea of the type of foundation they have. Then you start to talk about kind of their mental approach. You start to talk about their the mental game, what they've kind of been working on, what clicks for them, what doesn't click for them. Then when you get them in person, then you can start to assess some other things as far as the capability of their body and how they move. And you do different tests, and you kind of just look at it in person. I think nothing beats, though, just the experience of competing in game, right? Because I think a lot of the stuff that gets out there doesn't necessarily play, when you're facing 95 and 96 and 97. A lot of it may play in the cage, a lot of it may play off the tee or flips, but the evaluation, man, it's very, very, it's like this whole FBI project that you kind of got to really like dig in and look at it, and not just say, oh, this is how we're going to do it because this is how I teach. You really have to look at each individual player.
That's cool. Have you ever met any sort of resistance to advice from a player? Like, say, just an example, Kris Bryant. Everyone knows who Kris Bryant is within baseball. If you don't, you should watch his stuff on YouTube. He's pretty good at that baseball thing. Have you ever had to met any sort of, not negativity, but like some kind of pushback from players? And how suppose like for coaches that might be listening, how did you manage to convince them to adopt your methods or to see your way of thinking to help them progress?
Two things. I've kind of changed. I've evolved on this. You have the young coaches that are just getting started that are very energetic, are very fired up, and it's like they draw the line in the sand. This is how it's going to happen. Period. Plain and simple. A lot of that's not necessarily all their fault too, because sometimes in college you're very limited on time, right? Like you get there for the first 5 to 6 weeks, you have 2 hours a week with guys, and that's it. So there's certain things that you don't necessarily get to really dive deep into the why and the how to of certain things within the swing, based on time, based on restrictions, based on their academics, their schedule. So I think that's an issue, first off with that. But, now that I have more time to be able to be more patient, then you can kind of adjust the timing of your delivery. Because there's guys, that have come in, and, it's difficult because baseball, especially with the pro guys, they've been so successful. They hit pro ball. They now start to kind of waver a little bit because they're not as successful. And when you start to talk to those guys and maybe they have a little bit of resistance, then it's okay sometimes. And I've realized this, and I've talked to a lot of really good hitting guys about this. It's okay sometimes not to prove your point right away, right? I think a lot of coaches want it to prove their point right then and there and show how much they know, versus saying, okay, that's, take a step back and wait for when the timing of the delivery is the right time. And I think that way you get the more out of a player versus trying to shove something down their throat. Yeah. Because then otherwise that doesn't do anyone any good.
No. How did you manage to earn players' trust so early on when you started out? How did you sort of build your brand?
Yeah. I'd say more so questions and listening versus pushing. Not telling them that we have to go from A to Z in one session, and just being very, very clear on communicating, hey, here's the one thing or the two things that I want you to leave today really understanding. The other stuff may feel like crap, right? But if we can know how it works from the belly button down, and you leave the cage today knowing, or the field today knowing this concept, then that's success. So I think when you give players tangible items to be able to accomplish, and you just continue to drill on that and not waver and try and put too much out there, then they walk away feeling oh man, okay, I feel good. I feel a sense of accomplishment. Or they may say, this doesn't necessarily feel good, but I do understand what that is. And it doesn't necessarily have to feel, oh man, I'm the best player in the world leaving the cage or the field, right? So I think that's the way that you kind of continue to gain trust. And then after that, it's not just saying, okay, see you next week, right? When I work with guys, it's continual. Like we have a group thing going where I just continue to send stuff out and continue to say, hey, here's what I was talking about, or giving them those visuals, knowing what type of learner they are, right? Whether it's visual or they're auditory, whether they need to feel something. So just digging into the individual hitter, I think it is, that's a really, really important.
Yeah. So have you been doing a lot of stuff like these Zoom chats within lockdown with your clients and sending them videos and bits and pieces too?
Yeah, definitely. I've done some stuff with a few guys, yeah, for sure. But when guys fly in, really we've been kind of continuing, with the social distancing stuff and everything else. So yeah, we do the Zoom stuff. We do just videos, through text and everything else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ever take you back to when you were in school? Did you play baseball yourself? You played baseball while you're in Britain in Enfield. What was the step up like them coming from Britain into high school USA baseball?
Yeah. So, my jump was UK, and then I came over and I was 11. So I went into Little League in Central California, a small town called Porterville, California. And I went there. But that transition was fairly easy for me because I literally in the UK, I would work, 5-6 times a week. There wasn't a lot of kids that were doing that at 10 or 11 or 9 or whatever. So I came over and I did well, pretty early on. But that was just more so because I knew kind of what I had to do to come over here to compete, just because there's so many more good players. So going into high school specifically, then you kind of see a jump, right? Because you haven't really seen anything like that. But yeah, man, it was just a continual. How are you going to continue to get that little bit more each and every day? So yeah, the high school thing was a great experience, and then you just continue to find ways to get better. Just continue to find ways to get better all the time.
That's cool. So we went into GB. Was staying in baseball something you wanted to when you hung up your cleats? Is that how you sort of transitioned into becoming the hitting coordinator and also director of baseball operations in San Diego and the stuff with the high school?
Yeah. So after the WBC, I was kind of doing some lesson stuff in the off season. I lived in San Diego in the off season. The last place that I played was in Western Australia. So we moved down to San Diego, started coaching at La Costa Canyon High School here in Carlsbad. And I loved it. Right away, I knew I loved coaching. I loved kind of giving back, doing all that type of stuff from a coaching standpoint. So, so then I did that, and then I went over to USD, did the thing with as a director of baseball operations and the volunteers. So I kind of worked my way up into the recruiting coordinator and hitting coach there. And so the director of baseball operations really, like, you kind of handle all the grunt work. You handle all the paperwork, you handle all the travel, you handle that type of stuff. And you're on the field, but in a limited capacity. So, and then you kind of just evolved into all the hitting stuff, that's kind of happening today.
That's cool. You're also the founder of the North County Mavericks, Maverick High School College Prep Baseball Program. How did that project form? What was it for you that made you create the program?
Yeah, definitely. So in 2009, I was still at La Costa Canyon High School. And the thought process was to get something going where it was just about development of players and kids. You start to see a different perspective as when you go out to recruit travel ball here in the U.S. It gets out of control. There's a lot of stuff that gets put ahead of development, and a lot of it is based on ego, to be honest, right? There's a lot of ego out there that they want to win trophies and rings and tournaments and travel all over the place, when in the end of the day, you look at some of these kids are 10, they're 11, they're 12 years old, right? What about development? What about just really, really focusing on development? So that was kind of the idea in 2009. We started it, and then still have it today, and have a bunch of good players and coaches and teams, where that's kind of still our main focus. My son, Clayson, is now in 3rd grade, part of the Mavs program. So yeah, it's been cool to see it from before he was born to now.
That's awesome. I love the story. Speaking of your lad, this may or may not be a question from myself too, but what are you working on with your son, and what can I steal to use my 3-year-old?
Number one, keep him smile. Number one thing been doing, just keep him smiling while playing the game.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people say that, but a lot of people don't necessarily live by it. Yeah, and it's just, you can't, this is not a game where it's an overnight game. It's not a game where Augie Garrido, when we played at Texas, he had a great line. He told me, he said, hey, it's not a microwave game. You don't just throw it in the microwave and hit 1 minute, and then all of a sudden, there you go, you're a great player. This game is hard. This game, sometimes it sucks, but sometimes it's great. And that's why, people love it, because it's a difficult game to play. But once you start to kind of figure some stuff out, and you start to build some grit because you failed so much in the game, and you start to use it as experiences versus failures, it's such a cool thing to be able to do for a young person, because it's going to teach you so much about yourself. How are you going to handle adversity when you're going to get your butt kicked more times than not? So I think that's important. Just continue to have fun with it, and just and making sure that there's little things that you're continuing to kind of hit, and milestones you're continuing to hit.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I've got 1 or 2 more questions for myself before I hand it over to listeners, because I know we're on a bit of a time scale.
Yeah, and Matt, by the way, if I'm a little bit late to the meeting, no problem. I told the guys already. So
cool, good stuff. As a hitting consultant, or I suppose in any sort of aspect in your baseball in life or life, how do you measure your success?
I'd say doing the hitting stuff, success, obviously, when guys go off in the off season, they go to the season and they feel they do well, right? That's obviously a piece of it. I've had a few opportunities, and kind of working through some opportunities with some MLB clubs, but I've hesitated a little bit there, just because it's pretty cool to be able to have a variety of guys that I work with. But yes, I mean, success to me is based on relationships. If they're calling me during the season, or they're sending me stuff during the season, if they're they come back and they continue, they want to work on certain things and they're seeing improvements. But there's so much negativity that they receive in minor league baseball, because it's a business. It's great, but part of it is a business. That sometimes I think a lot of coaches forget how hard it is to play the game, right? So I'm not saying I'm their best friend, but what I do try and do is build really, really solid relationships with them, so they trust me with part of their career. Because in the end of the day, I'm just a piece of their career.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of how I measure success, and not necessarily them hitting 350 and hitting 30 home runs every year. But the relationships, and obviously you still need to have those kind of results as well, just based on their profession.
That's cool. Have you been out to see any of the players in the minor leagues?
Yeah, for sure. So even, like during the season, guys fly me out to wherever they're playing, and we get to work, say, on an off day, or you get to see them in live. That's probably one of the coolest things, is just to be able to sit back and watch them, because I'm just part of it. They have their hitting coaches there, they have their hitting coordinators there, they have their coaching staff there. But it has been pretty cool, because even some MLB organizations have conversations with me before the off season, just so we're on the same page. And I go back and forth with them, sending videos of their guys and seeing what they're thinking and all that stuff. So that's definitely a cool experience to be able to watch them live.
Yeah. Joey, Baseball Brit was supposed to be going across the states to all the minor league stadiums. Yeah. So what I want to know is, have you got any personal favorites? Because as much as I love seeing the massive, beautiful structures of Major League Baseball stadiums, I've not been to them, but like just looking at them, there's something about the smaller
minor leagues.
So like, the stadiums that just have something about them that I really love. Have you got any favorites?
Yeah, I mean, when I first moved to the U.S., we used to drive. There's a Central Valley Rockies, which was close by a town called Visalia. That was always so cool. Like, it had the wood fence with the mark, the billboards in there, and they had the bleachers, and you just kind of, you're right. Nothing beats watching minor league baseball. But I'd say, what my favorite was, it's probably been when I went out to Biloxi, Mississippi, kind of a random town out in Mississippi. But there's a Jacob Gatewood is a guy I work with, who's with the Brewers, first rounder with the Brewers. But I got to go out there, and it's a cool setup that they have. There's a casino in the right field, but just with the way it looks and the background and everything is pretty awesome. Cool atmosphere, cool stadium. And then, coincidentally at that time, Jazz Chisholm, who is played for GB, now obviously in the big leagues with the Marlins, his team was in town. And also on that same team, one of my college guys, Bryson Brigman, who is from NorCal, was also on that team. So I got to see all those three guys at the same time, which is kind of cool.
That's nice. That's pretty much it from me. So I'll move this on now to the listener questions. So thank you very much for your time I'll put it forward now to the people that matter. First up is Scott McKay. Question for Coach Marcelino: what is the best way to develop an international career in the game, and how do you get noticed by Great Britain or Team GB?
Yeah, I mean, if that's coming from obviously a non-GB, then there's just the contact points, just reaching out to Coach Drew Spencer, or to Team GB to send some stuff. But yeah, I think there's no necessarily secret pill or magic formula to that. It's just a matter of one, are you at a point where you can compete at the international level? If not, that's okay. Some guys, if they're not, they'll say they'll work, but they don't really. So just the development aspect of it, and not being afraid to get involved, Matthew, how you did it, just trying to find a way to get involved in baseball, in Manchester, and figure out a way to continue to get involved in the game. But don't be afraid to reach out. We're part of the GB's mission is to kind of grow the game in the UK and do it all together. Coach Liam did such a good job of that with the senior national team. And now Coach Spencer, I think, is going to do a really, really phenomenal job of just growing the game. So definitely reaching out and just continuing to develop.
Yep. Thank you very much. Cheers for that, Scott. I've got one from Matt Moran, who is part of the GB you've set up. It's put question for Coach Marcelino: what is his vision for GB baseball future, and what does he want to see happen for the national team?
Good question. The future for GB, I think, is important to find ways, find opportunities, find different tournaments, find different training games, all that stuff to develop the domestic players, to continue to increase their level of play, to see those guys continue to develop and then develop for the national team, for the senior national team. But one thing we've talked about is having a pride right, for the senior national team, and making sure that guys that not just domestically but internationally understand how much it matters. Because I think sometimes there may be some guys that have just kind of come in and then they're all of a sudden they're gone, right? But you have to really earn one of those spots on the senior national team. So it's given me so much, right? The game has given me so much that I'm so passionate about just giving back to the youth, because I was one of those guys. So whatever we're doing, so there's some cool things that we're going to be putting in place with the senior national team to kind of filter that down to everyone else, because it's important for the youth to continue to develop.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you very much. Cam from Manchester Baseball, been training with me, has asked, what's the best way to improve hand speed when batting, and what is your opinion on launch angle versus backspin?
Great question. Hand speed. So what I know now is that a lot of kids, they want to specialize right away, right? So they want to just do baseball only. Playing multiple sports, right, is important for kids. Not just sticking with baseball, because there's so many cross-functional movements that happen when you play baseball, football. You play other different sports. There's just so many good things that happen. So number one, doing that, not specializing too early. Being focused, yes, on technique and mechanics and how your swing, your sequence of your swing works, but also plain and simple, getting stronger, right? If you don't have access to a gym, there's ways to get stronger. There's plenty of ways to get stronger. But I think that's a big deal with hand speed, and a lot of, just making sure that hand speed's important, yes, but the way that everything gets to your hands and the way you speed up your hands is by taking care of everything underneath your hands. So how you use the ground the right way, your lower half, your core, all that's really, really important. And then, sorry, Matt, the second part of the question was launch angle versus backspin. So this is part of the reason why I think the social media thing for hitters, and I said this to another guy, Coach HP, I was talking to, it's dangerous for a lot of kids, because there's a lot of emphasis right now in hitting the ball in the air, right? But the question, the two things I always say is, when guys start to talk about launch angle swing, it's comical to me, because, and to a lot of hitting coaches that I talk to, because from the start of time, whether you're talking about, the first baseball player, or you're talking about rounders or cricket or whatever, every swing and every ball that comes off a bat has a launch angle, right? There's always been there. So what about just the mindset of hitting the ball hard on a line drive over the shortstop's head or over the second baseman's head? That's a ball in the air, right? But I think when people hear launch angle, automatically they think it's this loopy, can of fly ball to the outfield. So for young hitters, hitting the ball hard, right? Hit the ball hard. Then you start to develop. Then you start to get into your body. Then you start to get older and stronger. Now, okay, well, maybe if we live a little bit more and we're in the gaps a little bit more, then great, but launch angle versus, and then backspin, obviously with the backspin, I think what the question was is launch angle versus kind of maybe hitting the ball on the ground. So we want to obviously live on hard line drives through the infield, and then you kind of miss a little bit up, and then you get one out in front, then you hit the ball out. But the main focus being, find ways first to hit the ball hard. Find ways to hit the ball hard. Don't find ways to force the ball up into the air, because that's what you think you're supposed to do. So definitely hit the ball hard with backspin is a great combination.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next one, not really a question, but this comes from fellow Hall of Famer Gavin Marshall.
Legend.
Yes. It says, not so much a question, but a massive thanks for inspiring me. I saw Brad working out with his dad at the Oval in the early 90s. I just played in the junior finals and we won with the Hull Mets juniors. And instead of enjoying that moment, I was driven to watch this young kid working out. What I saw was someone working out harder than me, although Brad at the time wouldn't have realised this. But this turned out to be a pivotal point in my career because from that day forward, my workouts were fueled by his work ethics and that I was never going to be outworked by anyone. Brad, thanks for the push in life and baseball, and it was a pleasure to be there to see you and my granddad inducted into the Hall of Fame. In 1999, we finally got to wear the GB shirt together, and it was a pleasure and an honour. I had a perfect game going against the Germans, and one of them got a broken bat single off me to break the perfect game up in the eighth. Brad came running in and dove to try and save the perfect game. He was 100 foot short of catching it, but I remember standing on the mound and thinking, I'll go into battle with this guy anytime.
Oh man. See, this is what I'm talking about. You asked me earlier, you said, what players. I can't tell you how cool it was, the London series. Gavin Marshall. I mean, like, he was always a legend to me, and like, this is a dude. He's the first kid ever to, come over and play professionally. And even though he's older than me, I thought it was so cool at the London series to get inducted alongside with the Marshalls. But I just think, when you ask me about the influential people in your life, there's so many of those Gavin Marshalls that you have like this, you're always going to you always remember. You'll tell stories about that with your kids and your grandkids and forever. And we're on the other side of the world. So I think, that's just priceless. So Gavin, you're the man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, he's such a top guy. We're at the Battle for Britain in Kent in September. And the time he just took to chat with me and he even threw a few pictures to Littleton. And I've got it on video, like my son, 3-year-old, batting against Gavin Marshall. And he just gave us that memory. That's something that I'll never forget. He's such a top guy. Love it.
Yeah, Matt. I mean, he doesn't even know this, but he was playing catch with my son at the London series at the park. And I'm just standing there, and I had to put my Oakleys on, right? Because literally, like, how cool is that? We played in '99. He watched me at the Oval when I was 8, 9 years old, and now he's playing catch, in London, of all places, when the Yankees and the Red Sox are on the field with my 7-year-old, 8-year-old son. Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah, it's what I love about the game. Talakote has asked, how do you simulate facing good breaking balls without destroying the arms of every pitcher in batting practice? Maybe he's a fan of wiffle balls too.
Yeah. I put something out there about this. Jerry Weinstein is a legendary coach here in the U.S. who's done a lot of really good things too. His resume is unreal. But swing variety. So a lot of guys, I think, get stuck in the one speed flips underhand, and they don't have much variety in the swing. So finding anything that you can hit, whether that's a tennis ball, whether you bounce a tennis ball. I love that one. That's a really good one, especially on certain surfaces because it kind of hits the ground and then it kind of checks up like a changeup. So that's a really good simulator of a breaking ball, and not just like you guys are saying, like just ruining arms. You just kind of change up the flip speed, right? So if you're going to flip from a certain distance, moving the screen back and flipping from a longer distance, or you go overhand and you just mix in some slower fastballs or breaking balls. We use a lot of the badminton, the shuttlecocks. Those are great, and you guys probably have used those before. But when you throw them, they go and they kind of just float towards you. So definitely there's a swing variety, right? And not just get so caught up in one speed, one spot all the time the same. Finding other ways to be able to mimic those breaking balls are I think really, really important.
Cool, thank you. Charlie Bayfo has asked, what's one piece of advice that underpins your approach for coaching?
Was that you said that was Charlie?
Yeah.
Oh, love that guy.
Yeah, it's tough.
Charlie, Gavin, and myself had a long night after the London series. That was fun. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. What's one piece of advice that underpins your approach for coaching?
Um, never, never be satisfied. Never be satisfied. If I was satisfied, then I'd say that I can't tell you how much I've learned since I left USD, just digging in on hitting. But never be satisfied, never be complacent. That growth mindset, really, that's what it is, right? Just because you teach it one way, maybe there's some adjustments you can make to be better. You can be convicted, but don't be afraid to say, actually, there's a better way to do this. So I'd say that's the biggest thing.
Thank you. Great advice. Cheers. I'll let you try and guess who's asked this one. What's your favorite AC/DC song?
Oh gosh, got to be Lintern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he knows what it is. Thunderstruck. We have a little game. Maybe you guys have played it, but it involves lots of beverages with Thunderstruck.
No, I don't know it.
Yeah, well we got to change that, Matt. Me, you, and Will.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. As long as I can drink cordial, I think we'll be all right. Probably be a bit boring for me, but yeah, it sounds like a plan. He's also asked another two. He says, "What do you believe are the most consistent traits amongst the best hitters you've coached?"
Well, you have hitters, you can kind of categorize them, but definitely the guys that you have the smart guys and you have the guys that aren't so smart, right? And you have those two guys, and sometimes the smart guys are very, very mad scientists, over analytical. But I think the guys that can really be good at being self-aware and simplifying kind of their thoughts are generally the most successful, because they go up there and what do? They compete. A lot of times things don't happen well. Oh, I'm thinking too much, or I'm not seeing the ball well, or I feel very sped up, are a lot of the comments that happen, or I feel rushed. So the guys that are able to literally be able to find ways to slow the game down, and that happens differently for each guy. Simplification, slowing the game down, I think are important. And the two things I always tell guys are, hey, you can't come back and talk to me about your swing unless you can answer whether you swung, number one, at a strike. If you didn't swing at a strike, we can't talk about swing, right? Number two, if you can answer yes to you're on time versus no, then that kind of determines it. So those are the two questions I always tell guys. Did you swing at a strike? Yes or no? Were you on time to whatever pitch? Yes or no? And then if that's a yes and a no, then don't go to mechanics, right? Because now we're just talking about something that isn't really necessarily true to your swing. So those are the main traits, I'd say, is just guys that are very mature with that approach.
That's cool. Thank you very much. And final one from Will. Having played and now coached for GB Baseball at some of the highest level international tournaments, what advice do you have for British-based hitters who want to make it to the international stage? I suppose that covers some bits we spoke about before, but anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just continue again, check the ego, right? You don't need to be someone else. You don't need to not challenge yourself at practice because you're trying to hit the ball 400 feet every time. Work on being a hitter. Work on challenge yourself with different speeds, with different drills. Because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean you should not do it. I think a lot of guys get caught into that rut of, that doesn't feel comfortable, I'm going to kind of shut it down. No, if you want to develop, you need to have that swing variety and challenge yourself and not be afraid to fail at some of those things that you're doing.
That's cool. Thank you. A few coming from Rob Nelson. How old were you when you were a left-handed bullpen catcher warming up the pitcher before the British National League games in '91?
Oh gosh, 9 years old? Yeah, Nelly. So did you ever meet Nelly, Matt?
I've not had the pleasure yet, no.
Yeah, so obviously Nelly invented a big league shoe a long time ago. He would come over to Enfield to play with the Spartans, and he'd live in our house, and he'd live in a place called Strawberry Studios. He loves talking about that place with two guys, Dave Lewis and Robbie Daw, that went to Cornell, that were our imports. But 9 years old, Rob Nelson throwing knuckleballs at me in Enfield. That was fun.
What field were you on when you realized you had the potential to be a switch hitter?
Same place, Enfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Rob Nelson's camp, he charged 50 pence to attend his camp for a couple hours. It was a great camp.
Can't get much for 50p nowadays.
That's right.
And the last one from Rob: who was by far your wackiest coach in all your years in baseball?
Ooh. As a player, I mean, it's got to be Nelly. I mean, all these relate back to Nelly. He's talking about keeping the smile on your face while you're playing the game, and one of the greatest human ever. That's him. He's the best.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you very much. A couple more troops coming. Paul Stewart. I remember a very, very, very young Bradley always coming up to me at National League games I commentated on in 1989 and 1990 with the answers to the trivia questions I would pose. The best part was how the actual answer he'd been told to translate into something else he'd actually told you. Do you remember much from that?
Who's that?
From Paul Stewart.
Oh. Yeah.
Brilliant. And Martin Godsall. I played with his dad in GB, and against him when he played for the Mighty Spartans. Oscar had exactly the same work ethic when it came to training and putting in the time. Some other stuff there. Now, here's one that's been a bit of a debate. Now, this one, when you listen to it or watching this, is coming out in January, but I'm actually recording this in December because of time commitments and dates, which Brad has been so kind to give some time to me. But as we speak, there is, do we call it Pengate? Drew Spencer would like to know, what pens do you prefer to write your lineups with? Now, there's been a lot of talk with Drew and Cam and some of the other guys on Twitter at the moment about pens.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I wish I have it inside, but definitely a multicolor Sharpie guy. So you have the just the regular, not the fine tip, but regular Sharpie, but you got to have the black, the red, and the blue. I mean, you got to highlight the lefties and got to do all that stuff. So Sharpie.
Cool. Matt Locke also just saying, hello, how's your dad? We used to train with him back in the days of the Spartans. How is your dad?
He's good. Yep. He's a legend as always, just doing his thing, coaching around the world.
You know it. And two more, so let me find it. How did you develop such a big reputation in the game? I suppose that's in relation to your hitting.
Yeah, that's very kind, but I think just not necessarily checking the ego, just sharing information, being positive about it, continuing to learn. I think guys that talk about reputation or the types of guys or whatever, who they've worked with, and that's their focus of who they are probably insecure, and for me it's not necessarily about that. It's about just spreading the positive development to all players, not necessarily talking about what I know or who I've worked with or anything like that, because in the end of the day, I don't think really, number one, I don't think anyone cares, and number two, just sharing information and understanding that it doesn't always have to be right. Just having that mindset.
That's cool. Is there any one piece of advice that you can share with the British baseball community?
Not being afraid to say why not me. What I mean by that is I was in the same spot there, and if you're going to tell me, growing up in Enfield, that I would be working with big leaguers and and doing this and playing around the world and having the experience in the WBC and doing that is, I wouldn't tell you that was going to happen, and I'm very grateful for it, but I think there's a lot more to go. But so just not being afraid to challenge it, and working in a way where, why not you? How come just because you're in England? There's obviously resources. With that being said, the how-to is reach out, right? Like, I want to be a resource. The national team wants to be a resource. The seniors want to be a resource. We're going to have some of the guys that play overseas here reach out to the youth in the UK and connect it. And Drew's done such a good job of connecting the senior national team with the 12s and the under 15s and all these different now coaching staffs and players. So using your resources and not being afraid to utilize those resources. I think sometimes guys get a little bit tentative to do that, but don't be afraid to do it and just to continue to attack it every day.
That's cool. Thank you. And if you had one wish for British baseball, what would it be?
If I had one wish for British baseball, I would wish that every youth kid there could experience the game at a level that it has not only given me but plenty of other people. Being able to experience the game at that level through resources and different things that we were able to do to help them develop. Development, enjoying the game because they feel like it's going to help them. Maybe not coming over to play college baseball, but it's helped them develop so much that it's taught them, just about life in general.
Cool. Thank you very much. And I always like to leave the last word open to the guest. So, Brad Marcelino, before you go, any final words, any shout outs you'd like to give? Yeah.
Again, I can't stress it enough. If you are a youth player in the UK, and however old you are, or if you're a member, not even a youth player, just part of one of the clubs in the UK, I have so much pride in the Union Jack, and just because I'm living in California, doesn't mean that I don't have so much pride in that, because it's given me so much. So, long story short, reach out. You guys Matt can kind of share my stuff, but Marcelino Baseball, reach out there. Anything that we can do and I can do, or the GB senior national team, if it's in my reach, then I'm here to help. So don't be shy.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And where can we find you on social media? I must say that your Instagram is a must follow for anyone out there. The clips you put up on there of hitting and swings is just, yeah, it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, Marcelino Baseball is the Instagram. Generally, that's where I'm at. I don't live in the Twitter thing. I think gets posted automatically, but Twitter kind of gets a little bit too much for me. It's too much back and forth. So with all the negativity happening out there already, so you don't need that. So Instagram is the best one. Marcelino Baseball, or A3 Division is the other company that we have that we're using for player development. So either one of those places are great.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Brad Marcelino, thank you very much for your time.
You're the man, Matt. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Ta-ra.